President Lai is heading out on his first international trip since taking office, but he stopped over in the United States. Top Israeli and Hamas leaders are now wanted by the International Criminal Court for war crimes. Climate talks stall as no one can figure out who's going to foot the bill. Plus, some K-pop fans say they don't want plastic waste with their music. Welcome to Taiwan Plus News. I'm Yvonne Yang. President Chi-ming will travel to the Pacific next week and visit Taiwan's 3 remaining diplomatic allies in the region. But the government is keeping tight-lipped on details about U.S. transits stopovers that anger Beijing. Rick Gower has more from Taipei.
Well, Taiwan's President Chi-ming is going to make his first official overseas trip since he took office next week. This morning, the presidential office told us some of the details of the trip. He's going to visit Taiwan's 3 diplomatic allies in the Pacific. That's Tuvalu, Palau, and the Marshall Islands. The aim of the trip is to build friendship and build economic resilience and democracy. These are 3 of just 12 countries around the world that recognize Taiwan as a country. That's because China claims Taiwan as part of its sovereign territory and puts pressure on other countries not to recognize Taiwan as a nation. It's also been whittling down Taipei's diplomatic allies, which makes trips like these really important for Taiwan to shore up those relationships. Significantly, the presidential office did not confirm reports that Lai will stop off in the United States. It's expected that he will transit in Hawaii or Guam, though there are gaps in his schedule. Taiwan's leaders use trips like this to make stopovers in the US, an unofficial ally, but also another very important relationship for Taiwan. China has in the past staged military drills after such stopovers. This is a very short trip for Lai. He'll be away for just about a week, but he'll be dealing with some of Taiwan's most pressing geopolitical issues. That's maintaining influence in the Pacific and maintaining a relationship with the United States without overly antagonizing China. Justin Wu and Rick Lowett in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
The International Criminal Court has issued arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, and a Hamas military commander for alleged war crimes. It's the first time a sitting leader of a major Western ally has been accused of war crimes and crimes against humanity by the Global Court of Justice. Rosie Greninger reports.
Palestinians in Gaza search for survivors after Israel's latest strike on the enclave. More than 44,000 people have been killed here since Israel began its campaign against Hamas over a year ago. Now the men leading the charge are wanted for crimes against humanity. The International Criminal Court in The Hague has issued arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. The ICC judges found reasonable ground to accuse the men of bearing criminal responsibility for acts including murder, persecution and using starvation against Palestinian civilians as a weapon of war. They also issued a warrant for the military commander of Hamas, Mohammed Deif, who Israel says was killed in an airstrike. Both Hamas and Israel have rejected the ICC allegations, with the Israeli leader saying he does not recognize the validity of the decision.
זהו צעד אנטישמי שיש לו מטרה אחת, להרתיע אותנו ממימוש זכותנו הטבעית להגן על עצמנו מול אויבים הקמים עלינו להשמידנו. מאשימים את מדינת ישראל ברצח עם, בשעה שאנחנו פועלים להגן על עצמנו מאויב שמנסה לבצע בנו רצח עם.
Israeli political leaders have joined Netanyahu in condemning the ICC's decision, and the country has been backed by their most crucial ally, the US.
We fundamentally reject the court's decision to issue arrest warrants for senior Israel officials. We remain deeply concerned by the prosecutor's rush to seek arrest warrants and the troubling process errors that led to this decision. The United States has been clear that the ICC does not have jurisdiction over this matter.
The US has been a staunch defender of Israel, and this week, for the 4th time, vetoed a UN Security Council resolution calling for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, saying it did not guarantee the release of hostages taken by Hamas last year. And as they struggled to survive, Palestinians in Gaza welcomed the ICC's decision, seeing it as an important step on the path to justice. But many wish it had come sooner.
لذلك هذا القرار تأخر كثيرا، ولكن أن تصدر المحكمة هذه المذكرات اليوم لنتنياهو والوزير الحرب السابق، أنا بعتقد أنه يأتي بالاتجاه الصحيح، وخاصة بعد صدور الفيتو الأمريكي بالأمس لوقف إطلاق النار وإجهاض ذلك القرار في المجلس الأمني الدولي. اليوم نحن نتحدث عن ملاحقة مرتكبي الحرب المجرمين من أجل قطع الطريق على مواصلة هذه الجرائم، وهذا الأمر يأتي بالاتجاه الصحيح.
But those accused may not face prosecution anytime soon. The International Criminal Court doesn't have the power to enforce arrests, relying on its 124 member states to apprehend alleged criminals if they step foot in their countries. Israel and the US are not ICC members.
Friends of the court really need to step up and show that they are willing to back the court. So, you may have the reputation that, boy, it's this big, powerful court with lots of resources and lots of cooperation. But we haven't had sufficient cooperation.
Several of Israel's allies, including Italy, France, and Canada, have indicated that they would implement the ICC warrants if given the chance. Overall, the likelihood of a trial is very low, but the issuance of arrest warrants against the Israeli leaders is expected to impact their relationship with other countries, potentially applying pressure, analysts say, for Netanyahu's government to scale back the conflict. Devon Tsai and Rosie Greninger for TaiwanPlus.
Donald Trump's pick for Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has denied a sexual assault allegation from 2017.
The matter was fully investigated, and I was completely cleared, and that's from the legal. Thank you very much.
A woman filed a sexual assault complaint against Hegseth in the state of California, but prosecutors did not charge him due to a lack of evidence. U.S. President-elect Donald Trump has tapped the former Fox News TV host to lead the Defense Department. His confirmation still requires Senate approval. A draft climate finance deal that's short on details has triggered discontent at the COP29 summit in Baku, Azerbaijan.
Less than 48 hours before finishing, the critical objective of this COP is right now an empty placeholder. There is not a clear quantum defined by donors, so we are negotiating on nothing.
The latest draft arrived several hours late, with key information missing about how much wealthy countries should contribute in climate aid. The details on climate mitigation have also come under fire, with some countries saying the new tax weakens last year's fossil fuel commitments. Taiwan is unable to officially participate in the COP29 conference due to objections from China, but that doesn't mean it is not paying attention. To learn more about Taiwan's climate goals, Chris Gorin sat down for an exclusive interview with Environment Minister Chi-ming Peng in Taipei.
As we are recording this, it's the last day of the COP29 climate conference. The parties have not yet come to an agreement on a deal for financing climate projects in developing countries. Unfortunately, Taiwan is not able to participate officially in the summit, but Taiwan does sometimes adopt international standards of agreements that it's not a party to. So I'd like to ask you, any agreement that does come out of COP29, does Taiwan plan to adopt those same standards?
Although we cannot join, I still have some our think tank and also our professor linked with the Ministry of Environment still go there. And I can promise to the world we will follow the UNFCCC standard.
This year's COP29 is focused on climate financing for projects in developing countries. Yes. Currently, does Taiwan have any plan to provide this kind of financing to developing countries? And if so, how much?
Based on the global treaties, and before that, the global UNFCCC, they have a climate fund. And 1 year is about $100 billion US dollars. And this year, they hope it can 10 times, more than 10 times. And I think in Taiwan, because we contribute about 0.5% of the carbon emission, actually we should contribute we should pay some money for this. So if we are the member of the UNFCCC, and probably we can join, it's what we should do. But recently we cannot.
Taiwan has a policy of reaching net zero carbon emissions by 2050, but it faces some major challenges there. If we take electricity, for example, less than 10% of that is from renewables, and even though the use of renewables has gone up, it's basically been offset by the reduction in nuclear power. So the result is that since 2020, about 80% of Taiwan's power comes from fossil fuels. So I'd like to ask you, how does Taiwan plan to address this major gap between its climate goals of reaching net zero and its heavy reliance on fossil fuels?
The fossil fuel have two types. One is coal. The coal have lots of the carbon emissions, and the gas was lower, and it's about 60% of the carbon than the coal. So when we transition away the coal, maybe 10 years later, to the gas, is a huge transition about the carbon intensity. So I think in the next 5 years, the renewable energy will increase maybe about 25 to 30% in 2030. And about the nuclear, actually, my premier and also president is quite open.
So it sounds like this will take several years to implement, but I want to ask you, how does that square with the huge increase in electricity demand that Taiwan is facing? The economy minister said this week that TSMC, which is Taiwan's largest user of electricity, uses about 8% of all of Taiwan's electricity, may build a new factory every year for the next 10 years, and that the government needs to prepare the infrastructure for that kind of electricity use. So what would you say to those that argue that Taiwan is prioritizing AI over its climate goals?
So right now, the energy demand is totally, the government, especially the Thai Power, can provide the energy. So don't worry about this. We have some plan about the new gas power stations soon, and actually also the renewable energy. So right now in our cabinet, we are starting the new tools about this, but not traditional, the nuclear power station.
If you need to meet that extra demand, is the solution basically to just use more gas?
Yes, actually, use the gas is right now is the trend for the global. You can check the Singapore. Singapore, their gas usage is about 95% of the gas. So they want to use power lines from the Australia, Indonesia, Malaysia for the renewable energy. So such is this kind of thinking, probably in our cabinet, we talk about this. Any kind of opportunities or any potential, we can try.
That was Environment Minister Chi-ming Peng. Now stay tuned, because coming up after the break, government employees call for action after a fellow worker's suicide.
人生的话，你发现说，我们大部分都是爱美。
我自己少遇见一朵花，我可能就不是这个样子。
开始思考什么叫做一个本土性，
大声的唱出来说我是台湾人。
At a time when the world feels more divided, a platform for diverse voices to come together. I'm Divi Gopalan. Join the dots. Be part of the conversation. Connected where opinions matter.
Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. Former Labor Ministry official Xie Yirong has apologized after the suicide of a worker in her department. Xie has been accused of abusive behavior and creating a toxic work culture as part of the Workforce Development Agency. In a recorded message, she said she feels responsible for the worker's death and the aftermath.
也非常的自责，也深切的检讨，因为个人的言行、领导方式、管理方式、沟通方式及跟别人互动的模式所造成这样悲痛的事情。
The incident has created political waves and led to the labor minister's resignation. The scandal has put fresh focus on bullying in the workplace. Fellow civil servants say the law does not protect them or give them effective tools to fight back. And as John Van Trieste reports, they're taken to the streets to demand change.
职场霸凌法制化，职场霸凌法制化，公务人员组工会，公务人员组工会。
Government workers gather outside the cabinet building to remember one of their own, lost to suicide early this month after intense working hours and severe workplace bullying. The death of this labor ministry employee has made political waves, toppled the labor minister, and launched debate about how well Taiwan's laws protect against workplace abuses. But amid the uproar, public employees say there's one fact that's been overlooked. These protections don't apply to them. In Taiwan, government workers are treated differently. The Workplace Safety Act doesn't cover them, and they aren't allowed to form unions to deal with grievances. For over a year, they've been saying this leaves them vulnerable and pushing for the same rights other workers have, rights they say may have helped save the labor ministry worker's life.
如果公务员死了呢？有罚则吗？对于机关会有影响吗？就是有法律和没法律，确实还是有那么点差别。虽然说我知道，对我还是必须，就是我理解这件事，就是说台湾的职业安全做得很不够，不管是劳工还是公务员不够，但是公务员是连法律都没有。
Demands for unions and workplace protections have been bubbling for over a year when a violent factory fire killed 4 firefighters. But today, there's also a new demand. They say this suicide isn't isolated, and it's high time to outlaw workplace bullying and for complaints to get an independent review so that bullying complaints don't get swept under the rug.
在现在，其实也有人因为跟消防局讨加班费，然后被调单位。 然后被威胁这样子，其实这个我觉得都非常的荒谬，甚至最夸张的是，有人没有跟消防局有任何冲突，他只是单纯的加入了我们这个团体，他就被要求要退出了，他就被威胁了。
The protesters here today say they hope nationwide anger over this labor ministry employee's death will be what brings change. But a cabinet official sent to speak to them said there's nothing he can say. Any change will need time and the proper channels. This wasn't what the protesters wanted to hear.
我想这个制度面上，院长昨天已经有请各机关要赶快去做，还有权责机关就是要去做一个检讨跟研议啦。哦，所以这边，所以行政院会不会提版本？这个不是我能决定的，对。那你今天可以决定什么事？我今天就是把各位的诉求啊，能够忠实完整的呈现上去，啊，跟我们长官报告一样，那就是请我们必须要请所有的
陈情的长官都是这么说，哎。
Hurling papers printed with a government report that says the supervisor's behavior that may have led to the latest suicide wasn't actually bullying. These protesters are asked to clear off by police. But they say they won't stop pushing for a country where the same rules and rights apply to all. Alex Chen and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
A top National Security Bureau official has been impeached for sexual assault. Video footage shows Major General Xie Jinghua forcibly kissing a woman on the side of a road in February. The government's watchdog agency says he had been drinking alcohol and lied during an internal investigation. Agency officials unanimously voted to remove Xie from office. His behavior has drawn widespread condemnation.
谢晋华酒后失态强吻女子，严重伤害国安局的形象，还有台湾民众的信任。监察院以全票通过了对谢晋华的弹劾，这无疑对现在军纪的涣散还有废弛敲响了警钟。
Xie's case will now be handed to the disciplinary court for trial. Taiwan's national baseball team beat Team USA at the WBSC Premier 12 Super Round in Tokyo. Taiwan took the lead in the 4th inning, scoring 2 runs to the US's 1. Both teams scored again in the 5th. Team Taiwan sealed their victory in the 7th inning with 5 more runs, bringing the final score to 8-2. Taiwan is now 1-1 in the tournament standings. They will take on home team Japan on Saturday. The mis-Romanization of a Taiwanese indigenous baseball player's name during a Japanese broadcast of the Premier 12 has sparked a new conversation about indigenous naming convention. Girigilao Gongguan's name was spelled using a different method during an earlier game. Members of an indigenous activist group explained in a Facebook post that indigenous names often have special cultural meaning inherited from their family. They also wrote that indigenous people only got the right to use their Romanized names on official documents in May. Before, they had to use Chinese characters. And to learn more about indigenous naming conventions and the cultural importance of these names, Tiffany Wong spoke with Vian Zhang, the former director of Austronesian Center at National Taidong University.
How common is it for indigenous people to use their indigenous names in Taiwan? Are they often mispronounced or ignored?
Nowadays, it's more common to run into somebody who use his traditional, quote-unquote, traditional name. Only those people who are more aware of their traditional culture and their name being changed into a Chinese-style name and care about this matter would change their name back to their traditional name. But there's still a problem of whether you use a Chinese character to pronounce your traditional name, or you pronounce your traditional name in the traditional language. For example, the baseball player Girigilao should be pronounced in traditional Taiwan name should be pronounced Girigilao. Okay, but in Chinese, because he write his traditional name in Chinese character is Jilao. Okay, so you will see that Girigilao is definitely not similar to Jilao. So Chinese, if for ordinary Chinese-speaking Taiwanese, if they want to pronounce his name, also pronounce wrongly. But that is a deeper linguistic problem.
This year, Taiwan passed amendments that allow indigenous people to use just their indigenous names on their ID cards without using a Chinese transliteration as well. But society and the media have been slow to pick up on using their traditional names. Do you see this as symbolic, or do you think it's a step forward?
It's a symbolic move on the part of the government, but this symbolic move is sort of effective. But even though nowadays it's more, people has more awareness about the so-called traditional indigenous culture and naming system and their right and how they suffer from the after World War II till 1980s. How they suffer their loss of their culture and loss of their names and their dignity. Okay, but nowadays it's of course it's a progress.
That was Vian Zhang, the former director of the Austronesian Center at National Taidong University. A group of K-pop fans is taking the stand against South Korea's entertainment industry. They said it promotes overconsumption and contributes to the world's plastic waste problem. Once again, Tiffany Wong reports.
CDs, photo cards, and more. Once collectibles, now a threat to the planet. Climate-conscious K-pop fans are calling out South Korean entertainment companies for producing excessive merchandise, which they say is creating plastic waste.
요즘 누가 CD를 듣나요? 대부분이 스트리밍으로 음악을 듣는 지금 시점에 대부분 CD 플레이어도 없고요. 근데 이게 CD가 한 장씩 포함된 앨범을 엔터사의 마케팅 상수로 인해서 과대 생산하고 또 과대 폐기되는 이 문제가 계속 반복이 되고 있습니다.
Fans value physical albums for their collectible cover art and photo cards of idols. The same album often features random variations in cover designs or includes different cards, a marketing technique created to sell more copies as fans try to get their favorite band member. Album sales also count as lottery entries for fan meets, another incentive for fans to keep buying. A 2024 report on the South Korean music industry showed that only 8% of South Koreans listen to music on physical albums. At the same time, 119 million albums were sold in 2023, triple the sales in 2020. Another environmental report found that K-pop agencies had a 14-fold increase in plastic use from 2017 to 2022. And these activists are trying to warn fans against overconsumption.
사실 K-pop 팬들은 대부분이 10대, 20대의 미래 세대이고 굉장히 젊은 세대이기 때문에 기후위기에 직격탄을 맞을 세대입니다. 그렇기 때문에 기후위기에 굉장히 관심이 많고
There are efforts to digitize the vast world of K-pop merchandise, such as platform albums, which give fans access to music via a QR code. But even companies spearheading the change say there are challenges business-wise for entertainment companies to switch from physical sales to digital.
빌보드, 오리곤 차트 등의 해외 차트들에서 반영되는 것이고 두 번째로는 플랫폼 내에 있는 콘텐츠들이 지속적으로 팬들이 필요로 하는 것들이 개발되고 팬들한테 제공됨으로써 팬들이 꾸준히 사용해 주는 것이 가장 중요하다고 생각하고 있습니다.
Keeping fans satisfied and making sales, all while keeping the environment in mind, will be the next big challenge for South Korea's music industry. Joseph Wu and Tiffany Wong for Taiwan Plus.
Thank you for watching Taiwan Plus News. Finally, we take you to the Qingshan King Festival, one of the oldest temple events in Taiwan. I'm Yvonne. Take care, and I'll see you next time.